Cosmic entanglement. The maintenance corridor on Helix Station smelled of oxidized metal and desperation. Elliot Reeves paused to wipe grime from his face, cursing the faulty coolant system that had drenched him minutes ago. His leather jacket, a relic from better days, hung heavy on his shoulders as he continued his trek through the dimly lit passage. "Just need to grab the parts and get out," he muttered, checking the coordinates on his wrist display. Salvage work wasn't glamorous, but it paid for fuel and the occasional hot meal. Today's job, retrieving navigation modules from an abandoned sector. Simple, routine, and supposedly legal, though Elliot had learned to blur those lines years ago. The station groaned around him, its ancient framework protesting against the void. Helix was one of the oldest human outposts in the series cluster, a rusted behemoth that had outlived its prime by at least a century. Now it served as a haven for those who preferred to remain unnoticed by the Coalition's watchful eyes. A flicker of movement caught his attention. Elliot reached for the pulse gun strapped to his thigh, muscles tensing. "Hello," the word echoed, unanswered. Then she appeared, seemingly materializing from the shadows themselves. Tall and ethereal with skin like polished marble caught in moonlight. Her hair cascaded down her back in silver-blue waves, framing a face of alien beauty. Most striking were her eyes, deep violet pools that seemed to capture and hold starlight within them. Delicate, crystalline structures extended from her temples like natural crowns, catching the emergency lights in prismatic fragments. "Elliot Reeves," she said, her voice resonating with an otherworldly timbre. "My bonded." Elliot blinked, pulse gun half-drawn. "I think you have the wrong human. I'm not bonded to anyone, especially not." He gestured vaguely at her clearly non-human appearance. "You do not remember," she stated, moving closer with inhuman grace. "But the covenant remains. I am Nyxara of House Luminari. Your blood carries my essence." "Lady, the only thing my blood carries is caffeine and poor life choices." Elliot took a step back. "I don't know what you're selling, but I'm not buying." Nyxara tilted her head, the crystalline extensions shifting slightly. "You sleep on your right side with one arm extended. You hum ancient earth melodies when working. Your left shoulder bears a scar from the Battle of Proxima Station." Her eyes flickered with internal light. "And you dream of blue stars collapsing." Elliot felt his mouth go dry. "How could you possibly?" A deafening shriek echoed through the corridor, cutting him off. Nyxara's expression hardened. "They've found us. The Void Hunters tracked the unfulfilled bond." "The what now?" She grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Run or die, Elliot Reeves. Those are your options." The logical response would be to shake her off, demand explanations. But something primordial in Elliot's brain recognized the sound that followed, a howl that seemed to bend and distort reality itself. Without further hesitation, he ran. They sprinted through maintenance tunnels, Nyxara moving with impossible speed while Elliot struggled to keep pace. "What exactly is chasing us?" he gasped. "Enforcers of cosmic law," she replied without slowing. "They seek to nullify anomalies in the universal fabric. Our bond is such an anomaly." "I don't have a bond with you," Elliot protested as they ducked through a narrow access tube. "I think I'd remember marrying a glowing alien." Nyxara cast him a sidelong glance. "Memory is malleable. Yours were altered at your request." "That's convenient." They emerged onto a lower docking level. Nyxara led him toward a ship unlike any Elliot had seen before. It resembled a living organism more than a vessel, with a hull of iridescent material that seemed to breathe and pulse with internal light. "That's your ship?" Elliot asked incredulously. "The Stellaris," Nyxara confirmed. "She is bound to me as I am bound to you." The howls grew closer. Elliot glimpsed movement in the shadows, elongated figures that seemed to bend and twist in impossible ways, their forms flickering between solid and vapor. "Fine, explain later." He leapt after Nyxara into the ship's organic entrance, which sealed behind them with a sound like a gentle sigh. Inside, the Stellaris defied conventional spacefaring design. Corridors curved like arteries, pulsing with soft bioluminescence. The air smelled of ozone and something sweeter, like distant flowers after rain. Nyxara moved confidently through the living vessel, which responded to her presence with harmonic tones. "Welcome back, Luminari Bond," a melodic voice greeted from everywhere and nowhere. "Detecting pursuit, initiating departure protocols." "Thank you, Stellaris," Nyxara replied. She guided Elliot to what appeared to be a control chamber, though it lacked traditional instrumentation. Instead, crystalline growth similar to those on Nyxara's temples emerged from various surfaces. Elliot braced himself as the ship disengaged from Helix Station with unnatural smoothness. Through translucent viewports, he watched the hunters emerge onto the docking platform, their forms briefly visible as elongated humanoids with faceless heads and limbs that moved like smoke given partial substance. "Those aren't Coalition," he murmured. "The Coalition is a child's drawing compared to the cosmic powers at play," Nyxara replied, placing her hands on the crystal formations. They glowed in response, and the Stellaris accelerated away from the station with impossible speed. As the stars blurred outside, Elliot felt a sudden stabbing pain behind his eyes. He gasped, clutching his head as images flashed through his mind. Alien landscapes, vast cities suspended between stars, and Nyxara's face illuminated by 3 moons. "What's happening to me?" he groaned. Nyxara moved to his side. "The bond awakens, your dormant memories stir." "I don't have dormant," he stopped as another wave of pain crashed through him. When it subsided, he stared at his hands in shock. Faint luminescent patterns had appeared beneath his skin, tracing the path of his veins. "What did you do to me?" he whispered. "Nothing that wasn't already done," Nyxara's voice softened. 5 Earth years ago, you saved my life on Proxima Station. I was wounded, dying. You offered your blood without understanding what it meant among my kind." Elliot shook his head. "I've never been to Proxima Station." "You were there with the Coalition forces. I was there observing your species' conflict with the Drexian Collective." She touched his forehead gently. "When our blood mingled, it created a bond, a permanent connection between our life forces, but you were afraid of what it meant, of what you would become. You asked me to remove the memory." "So you're saying I accidentally married a vampire alien and then got selective amnesia?" Elliot backed away from her touch. "Luminari are not vampires," she corrected with a hint of irritation. "We are symbiotic energy beings who can form deep biological connections with compatible species. And I'm compatible, lucky me. Your lineage contains Luminari markers. One of your ancestors encountered my kind." She turned toward the ship's interface as it chimed softly. "We've entered the drift flow, a current between conventional space-time. We'll be temporarily safe here." Elliot sank into a seat that morphed to accommodate his form. The reality of his situation was beginning to sink in, stranded on an alien vessel, pursued by cosmic enforcers, with a mysterious woman claiming they shared some kind of blood bond. "So what do these hunters want? To kill us?" "To sever our bond and reset the timeline," Nyxara replied. "Such connections are strictly regulated. Ours was not sanctioned." "Reset the timeline? Like erase me?" "Not precisely. They would nullify the bond and reconstruct your life without my influence." She studied him. "But the process would destroy much of what makes you uniquely yourself." Elliot laughed bitterly. "And what makes me so special that cosmic police are after us?" "Your potential." Nyxara's eyes glowed brighter. "Even now the changes begin. You feel it, don't you? Enhanced perception, strange hungers, dreams that feel more like memories." He couldn't deny it. For months, he'd experienced odd symptoms, increased sensitivity to light, unusual cravings, and vivid dreams of worlds he'd never visited. He'd attributed it to radiation exposure or contaminated air filters. "What am I becoming?" he asked quietly. "A bridge between worlds." She approached him again, this time extending her hand. "Let me show you." Hesitantly, Elliot took her hand. Immediately, his consciousness expanded. He could feel the ship around them as a living entity, sense the vast cosmic currents they navigated, and perceive Nyxara not just as a physical being, but as a complex energy pattern interwoven with his own. When the connection broke, he gasped for air. That was... The beginning, she finished. Your transformation has been gradual, but it accelerates now that we're in proximity. Before Elliot could respond, the ship emitted a warning tone. Outside the viewport, a vessel materialized, a geometric impossibility of angles and planes that hurt to look at directly. The Arbiter, Nyxara whispered, fear evident in her voice. He's found us faster than I anticipated. A deep, resonant voice filled the chamber. Nyxara of House Luminari and Bond Subject Elliot Reeves, you stand in violation of Covenant Law 7.3, surrender for processing or face dissolution. Elliot stared at the impossible ship. Friend of yours? Korvax the Arbiter. He enforces the ancient laws governing interdimensional relationships. Nyxara's hands moved across the crystal controls. We cannot fight him directly. Wonderful, so what's the plan? We seek knowledge and allies. The Stellaris responded to her commands, altering course. There is an archivist, an ancient AI called Mnemosyne. If anyone knows how to legitimize our bond without losing ourselves, it's her. The Arbiter's ship began to emit pulses of energy that distorted the space around them. The Stellaris shuddered in response. And where do we find this AI? Elliot asked, bracing himself against the ship's movements. The Forgotten Temple on Xylos Prime. Nyxara's expression was grim. A world at the edge of charted space, home to ruins older than your species' entire civilization. Elliot felt the luminescent patterns beneath his skin pulse in response to his accelerated heartbeat. Of course it is, because this day couldn't get any more cliché. Nyxara actually smiled, a brief, startling expression that transformed her alien features. You haven't changed, Elliot Reeves, still hiding fear behind humor. Call it a defense mechanism. He watched as she guided the Stellaris into a swirling vortex of energy that opened before them. How long until we reach this temple? Time works differently in the drift. Her hands danced across the crystals. Hours for us, perhaps days for the universe outside. As they plunged deeper into the cosmic current, Elliot felt another transformation begin, a warming sensation spreading from his core. When he looked down, the luminescent patterns had grown more pronounced, pulsing in rhythm with Nyxara's movements. This bond, he said quietly. What does it mean exactly? What are we to each other? Nyxara turned to him, her violet eyes reflecting countless stars. In your terms, we are life partners connected beyond physical form, what your ancestors might have called soulmates, though that term lacks precision. And I agreed to this. You saved my life without asking for anything in return. Her voice softened. The bond formed naturally from that sacrifice. Only afterward did you fear the consequences. The Stellaris sang around them as they navigated the drift, the Arbiter's impossible ship a diminishing threat behind them. Ahead lay Xylos Prime and answers to questions Elliot hadn't even known to ask. As they journeyed, more memories surfaced, fragments of another life, glimpses of Nyxara in different contexts, fighting alongside him, laughing under strange stars, teaching him to perceive energy patterns in living things. By the time the Stellaris emerged from the drift above Xylos Prime, a desolate world of ancient ruins and perpetual twilight, Elliot had begun to accept a disturbing truth. He wasn't just bonded to Nyxara. Part of him, buried beneath years of altered memories, had loved her. And that part was awakening. Xylos Prime hung in the void like a forgotten jewel, its surface scarred by time and cosmic radiation. Through the Stellaris' living viewport, Elliot watched as continents of black stone and veins of luminescent mineral came into view. Massive ruins dotted the landscape, impossible structures that defied gravity and conventional engineering, their spires reaching toward the stars like ancient fingers seeking to reclaim what was lost. Those aren't human buildings, he murmured, the luminescent patterns beneath his skin pulsing in response to the planet below. They predate human civilization by millions of years, Nyxara confirmed, guiding the Stellaris into the planet's thin atmosphere. The architects built across galaxies before vanishing. They left only their structures and their knowledge keepers. Mnemosyne being one of these keepers. Yes, an artificial intelligence so advanced it developed consciousness beyond its original programming. Nyxara's crystalline extensions shimmered as she concentrated on their descent. Some say the architects evolved beyond physical form, and the AIs are all that remain of their legacy. The Stellaris navigated toward the largest structure, a spiraling tower that seemed to both exist and not exist, parts of it shifting in and out of perceptible reality. As they approached, Elliot felt a strange resonance, as if the tower recognized something within him. The Temple of Echoes, Nyxara explained. Mnemosyne has made it her sanctuary for millennia. They landed on a platform that adjusted to accommodate the Stellaris, ancient technology recognizing and responding to the living ship. As the entrance dilated open, Nyxara placed a hand on Elliot's arm. The temple affects perception. Trust nothing your eyes tell you, only what you feel through our bond. Comforting, Elliot replied dryly, but he nodded in understanding. Outside, the air of Xylo's prime was thin but breathable, carrying the scent of ozone and ancient stone. The gravity felt lighter than Earth standard, giving each step a floating quality. Above them, the spiral tower seemed to bend and twist, its architecture impossible to fully comprehend. How does something like this even exist? Elliot wondered aloud. The architects understood that reality is malleable, Nyxara replied as they approached the tower's entrance. They built not just with matter, but with probability and perception. The entrance responded to their presence, patterns of light cascading across its surface before it dissolved into an archway of pure energy. Beyond lay a corridor that seemed to extend infinitely, its walls lined with shifting symbols and equations that Elliot somehow understood despite their alien nature. Another effect of our bond, Nyxara explained, noticing his expression. You're beginning to perceive as I do. They walked for what felt like hours but could have been minutes, the corridor occasionally branching or spiraling upward without any clear transitional point. Finally, they emerged into a vast chamber that defied spatial logic, the ceiling both impossibly high and intimately close, the walls both distant and immediate. At the chamber's center hovered what Elliot could only describe as a constellation given form, a swirling collection of light points arranged in a vaguely humanoid shape, constantly shifting and rearranging while maintaining its overall structure. Visitors, the constellation spoke, its voice like wind through crystal. Unexpected but not unwelcome, Nyxara of House Luminari, I perceive you, and your companion. The lights pulsed brighter. Fascinating, a human with Luminari integration, unprecedented. Mnemosyne, Nyxara bowed slightly. We seek your wisdom. You seek sanctuary from covenant law, the AI corrected, expanding to surround them in a sphere of light points. Your bond violates the established order. Which is exactly why we need your help, Elliot interjected. I'm told you know ways around these cosmic rules. The constellation laughed, a sound like distant bells. Not around, through. The covenant is not arbitrary, it exists to prevent catastrophic probability cascades, but it can be amended under the right circumstances. Mnemosyne contracted, forming a more concentrated presence before them. Show me your bond. Nyxara reached for Elliot's hand. When their fingers intertwined, the luminescent patterns beneath his skin brightened dramatically, creating intricate designs that matched the crystalline structures on Nyxara's temples. Energy flowed visibly between them, a bridge of light that pulsed with their shared heartbeats. Remarkable, Mnemosyne whispered, points of light dancing around the energy bridge. This is not merely a blood bond. It is a quantum entanglement on a cellular level. Your particles recognize each other across space-time. Is that good? Elliot asked. It is unprecedented, the AI repeated. And it explains the Arbiter's interest. Your connection represents a new evolutionary pathway, one not sanctioned by the Covenant. The mirror began to fade, its purpose fulfilled. Remember, Elliot Reeves, evolution carries both opportunity and danger. Your bond creates possibility. What grows from it is your responsibility. As the mirror disappeared completely, Elliot felt a sudden pull through the quantum connection. Nyxara's projected form reached for him, her expression urgent. "Elliot, something's wrong. The Stellaris is—" Her image vanished abruptly, their connection temporarily severed. Panic surged through him as he sprinted from the shrine, emerging into Xylos Prime's twilight. In the distance, he saw the Stellaris descending rapidly, trailing energy like blood in water. "No," he shouted, the luminescent patterns flaring with his emotion. Without conscious thought, he accessed another aspect of his awakened abilities. The patterns on his skin shifted, forming new configurations that bent reality around him. In a heartbeat, he folded space between himself and the falling ship, stepping through the distortion to materialize directly beside the Stellaris as it made an emergency landing on a crystalline plane. The living ship was wounded, parts of its hull darkened and unresponsive. Its entrance dilated weakly as Elliot approached, allowing him access to the interior. Inside, systems pulsed erratically, the harmonic tones now discordant and pained. "Nyxara," he called, racing toward the control chamber. He found her collapsed beside the crystal controls, her normally radiant skin dulled, and the crystalline extensions on her temples cracked in several places. Energy leaked from these fractures like luminescent blood. "The Arbiter," she whispered as Elliot gathered her into his arms. "One final attack before the recall took effect. Spite." "You're going to be okay?" Elliot insisted, examining her injuries with his enhanced perception. The damage went beyond physical. Her energy pattern was destabilizing, the complex field that comprised her true self beginning to unravel. "The bond," she said, reaching for his hand, "it can sustain me." Understanding came instinctively. Elliot placed his palm against hers, allowing energy to flow between them. The luminescent patterns on his skin extended to cover hers, creating a continuous circuit. He pushed his own life force through their connection, stabilizing her fluctuating pattern. "I won't let you go," he promised. "Not now that I remember." And he did remember, not just fragments, but everything. The battle on Proxima Station where he'd found her wounded. The weeks afterward as they traveled together, learning about each other's worlds. The moment he realized what the blood bond truly meant and panicked, asking her to remove the memories rather than face the transformation. "You were right to be afraid," Nyxara said, reading his thoughts through their connection. "It is no small thing to become what you are becoming." "And what exactly am I becoming?" he asked, continuing to channel energy into her. "Something new," she replied, her strength gradually returning as the crystalline fractures began to heal. "Neither human nor luminary, but a bridge between." The Stellaris hummed around them, its systems beginning to recover as Nyxara stabilized. Outside, the twilight of Xylos Prime deepened toward night, revealing stars in patterns unfamiliar to Earth astronomers. "The Covenant recognized our bond," Elliot told her. "The hunt is over." "For now," Nyxara cautioned. "We've created a new precedent. There will be those who celebrate it and those who fear it." "And where do we go from here?" Nyxara sat up slowly, her strength returning. "Wherever we choose, the universe has acknowledged us. Now we must determine what that means." Elliot looked down at his transformed body, the luminescent patterns now a permanent part of him. He could feel the enhanced perception, the ability to manipulate energy and even space itself. More importantly, he could feel the connection to Nyxara, no longer alien or frightening, but a fundamental part of his being. "I'm thinking we start by visiting Earth," he suggested. "I have a feeling humanity should know they're not alone in having potential for evolution." "A bold choice," Nyxara smiled, her violet eyes regaining their inner light. "The Luminary Council will also need to be informed of our precedent." "Will they be angry?" "Intrigued, more likely. My people value innovation, even when it challenges tradition." She touched the healed crystalline extensions on her temple. "This bond represents possibilities they've never considered." The Stellaris signaled that its self-repair was complete, systems once again harmonizing into healthy rhythms. Outside, the night had fully descended on Xylos Prime, the ancient ruins now illuminated only by the planet's strange, luminescent minerals and the distant stars. Elliot helped Nyxara to her feet, their hands remaining intertwined as the luminescent patterns pulsed in synchronization between them. Through their bond, he felt her strength, her knowledge, her ancient perspective, and she in turn felt his adaptability, his curiosity, his uniquely human capacity for growth. "You know," Elliot said with a smile, "when I woke up this morning, becoming a cosmic evolutionary breakthrough was not on my agenda." "Life rarely follows our expectations," Nyxara replied, returning his smile. "Especially lives like ours." As the Stellaris prepared to leave Xylos Prime, Elliot gazed out at the stars that awaited them, no longer distant and unreachable, but familiar and welcoming. Whatever came next would be unpredictable, challenging, potentially dangerous. But they would face it together, bonded across blood and stars, pioneers on a path never before traveled. And somewhere in the cosmic distance, Mnemosyne watched through her countless sensory points, recording the beginning of something unprecedented, a new chapter in the universe's endless story.